Apple doesn't sell technology. They do, but they don't. What Apple sells is they sell you music.
All right, everyone, welcome to another episode of Creative Haven. I'm here with Ricky Holm, and we actually met online through email when I was just reaching out to really cool production companies and people who inspire me. And I came across Chocolate Milk and Donuts, and I'm a big 360 video fan. I used to shoot with the Ricoh Theta and the GoPro Odyssey back in the days. So I was just so hooked on all of his portfolio, and I was just very interested. And so I was lucky to get Ricky on here. So Ricky, just want to say thank you. I want you to actually, talk more about your background and how you got to where you are today.
Oh man, that's a fun, and I'll do my best to keep it tight because it's kind of a long story. So to go to how I got to where I am today actually started with a puppy and a dog. And so I grew up on a small farm, believe it or not, outside Seattle. And we had, regular old antenna TV for any of the young folks out there listening. We actually had a metal antenna on our roof, and that is how our TV was beamed into our house. And when I was around 6 or 7 years old, we got a new puppy, and that puppy, as they do, decided to chew on things, and it chewed up the TV antenna cable running out of the house. And at that point, our TV ceased to exist. And my father, is, much as I love him and cherish him as a person, decided that was enough. We didn't need TV anymore. And so from there on out, for the rest of my childhood, I had no television. But, and this was, again, I'm dating myself a little bit here, and I came from a bit of a small town. One of the 5 or 6 shops that we had in the little city I grew up in was a movie rental store. Yes. And so that's right. So when my sister and I were good and, got our homework done and did our chores and all of those other great things, we got to go pick out movies if my sister actually let me choose, because she's older and you know how that goes. She normally got to dictate. And so we would go get to pick films out. And so, fast forwarding a little bit, what that did is throughout my entire childhood, I basically, a lot of my entertainment, if I wasn't at a friend's house, I should say visual entertainment was film. And so I fell in love with movies. I fell in love with storytelling, and I just became so fascinated with it. And so, going through junior high and high school and all that stuff, I always had this kind of intrigue and interest of being a storyteller, being a movie maker. And so after high school, I actually moved to Canada and went to a fantastic film school, VFS, or Vancouver Film School. It's in downtown Vancouver, Canada. So it's a lovely place. It's a great school, very technical, very hands-on.
Amazing.
Yep. And so I did that, and I graduated in the very early months of 2018, and I moved home to Seattle, and the world proceeded to fall apart around all of us, right? And so as a young recent grad trying to get into the film business, and at that time I didn't like LA, and so I didn't want to move to LA. I was going to do it my own way. I'm going to do it. I'm always doing things my own way. It's just the mentality I have. And so, 2008 comes, the economy crashes. I don't want to move to LA, which probably wouldn't have done me much good at that point anyway, because the entertainment business was suffering as it was. And so I actually had kind of a life moment happen where a good friend of mine actually passed away very suddenly. And it triggered this, I wasn't doing what I wanted to do. I was stuck. And so I felt stuck. And so when that friend of mine passed, I decided to kind of re-enroll in school, because I also wanted to start my own company. And so I went to business school, University of Washington, and did that. And right around graduation, I got hooked up with a guy who had a really visionary concept for a video production company. Tiny little studios all over the country where brands could come in and just knock video content out in a hurry. Prior to this phone call, we were chatting about, content needs and how much content brands need these days. And so I think he was even ahead of his time in that idea. And so I was working on some other projects. I kind of abandoned all my own stuff and was like, you know what? I'm going to jump on this guy's train. Long story short, that didn't work out. We couldn't come to an arrangement. And so again, I'm stuck in Seattle. This job I thought I'd love was not going to happen. And my dad is begging me to come and work for his company, which I'd done my whole childhood. And I was like, I don't want to do that. I love you, Dad, but I'm not going to do that. And so I kind of just took off. I took a break, and that's how I ended up in Austin, Texas. And so ended up in Austin, and a dear friend of mine who works in the film business now, he's a DIT in LA. He graciously opened his house to me and let a broke college kid in the search of his passion and career be a live-in roommate and uncle in exchange for, a place to crash for a few months. And so,
nice.
If it wasn't for Shannon, I would have never stayed in Austin, Texas. And so
shout out to Shannon.
That's right. Shout out to Shannon. Thank you, Mr. Shannon. So got to Austin and was searching for something else. I got a job. I didn't know. I still want to be a storyteller. I still have this passion, this energy of like, man, I want to tell stories, but I need something different. The Hollywood system isn't for me. What is it? And so I got a job. You got to pay your bills. So I got a job working at a great little production company, which still is in existence. We'll give them a shout out. It's in Austin called Spark Sight. They do great work. I think they do a lot of drone work nowadays and other kind of brand videos. So
yeah, Spark Sight.
There we go. I got I worked for Spark Sight. I was there for 90 days as a producer, and they said, hey, you got what it takes to do this. And they bumped me up to the head of operations of that business. And so that was cool. I got to learn a lot there. It was a great place for me to learn and grow as a producer, and to get a good insight of what it meant to be in the production space and what it took to run a production company. And so I'm very thankful for that opportunity. But again, it wasn't, probably, to be completely honest, it wasn't challenging enough for me. Mm-hmm. I was looking for something with a little bit more challenge and opportunity to learn and grow as a creator and an individual. And in that particular role, I just wasn't being pushed in the direction that I felt like I needed to go. So I was searching, and there's a very, I have at the time a mentor of mine in Austin, a very successful entrepreneur there. And I was talking to him, and he had brought up the idea of what about virtual reality? And this was way back, like early Oculus DK1 days, if anyone even knows what that means. And like, I was like, you know what? I'm not a programmer. I'm not a video game guy. I'm not interested in this VR thing. And he goes, you know what? Here's a VR headset. Take it home, play with it. Just give it, think about it. He's like, I think there's something here. And so I took this VR headset home, and I put it on. I sat on my bed, and I remember this vividly. I put on this VR headset, and this is one of the old ones where you snap your cell phone into it. Right?
Yes, like the cardboard.
Yeah, this was the Samsung, so it was plastic, but it used like an old Samsung S7 phone.
Oh my God, I remember that. It's like 2015.
Exactly. So I go home and I pop this thing in. I download this video. It took like 2 hours to download, and it was this amazing. I've never had an experience like that in my life. And it was by a company named a production studio out of Canada called Felix and Paul. And that company had created this experience from the Cirque du Soleil, where you got to sit in the center of the stage, and Cirque du Soleil performed to you, not to an audience, but to you, an individual. And it was, you can pay a bunch of money to go sit in the front row of Cirque du Soleil, and I'm sure it's a beautiful experience. But when it was like 15 different performers were all performing to you individually. And it was just this like mind-blowing experience. And I don't remember how long the video was, but I remember I took the headset off. Somehow I had gotten on the other side of my bedroom, right? and I take it off, and I'm just like, holy F, right? We'll keep this PG, right? But it was just like, it blew my mind on this new type of experience I had had, and this sense of presence that it had created in me. And so I knew at that point that there was something special about virtual reality, 360 video, this new type of entertainment, this new type of storytelling. And so as my life seems to progress in this way, or at least it was until this point, I within like a week of that, I went and I quit my job on April Fool's Day, matter of fact. So I'd come into agreement with the gentleman, the mentor I had, that we were going to start this business together, this VR production company. And so I quit my job. He was going to fund it, and I was going to run it.
Boom.
Yeah, that's right. Ran out the door. Said very thank you very much to the folks at Sparkside. I put my 2 weeks in and I was done. And that actually didn't work out. That gentleman and I never came to an agreement that I wasn't happy with, right?
Oh.
It's just we were looking for different things. And so I quit my job. I had very little savings at the time. I had told my investor to basically go away. And that was on like a Monday or Tuesday. Ooh. I had to leave town. The next weekend for a wedding. And then when I got home on Monday, I had to pitch my company for the first time publicly at the startup incubator in Austin, known as called Capital Factory. Oh. And this was like my first time personally like representing the business. And we'd already been accepted into this kind of pitch thing, and like it was like, oh no, like what am I going to do? And so I went to this wedding with my best friend in LA, and we like had a good time. And that's actually where I came up with the name, which is a whole nother story. And I came home, and I will never forget that that first week, I mean, standing up there, shaking on stage, telling the world, at least in my little tiny bubble of a world I lived in, pronouncing who I was, what I was doing, and telling everybody that I was the owner, the founder, and the sole member of this new company, Chocolate Milk and Donuts. We were a VR/AR agency in Austin, and I put my flag in the sand that day. And that'll be that was 5 years ago this coming July. Wow,
that is a story.
Yeah, that's how I got into it. And you know, when we started the business, I had a classically trained video producer. The mentor had purchased a VR camera that we were playing with. So I bought that from him with the little kind of savings that I had. And so it was me, one of those GoPro Omnis, right? The old 6 GoPros stuck inside of a plastic ball.
Oh my gosh.
No, it wasn't even the Omni. It wasn't even the Omni. The Omni had the computer controller in it. This was literally 6 GoPros inside of a 3D printed piece of plastic.
Yes, the 3D printed one. Oh my God, I remember that one.
You gotta hit record on each camera individually, and then like clap your hand. Oh my God. Okay, so someone that feels my pain. And so, and my roommate at the time, like I took over the living room, and I had our like this PC that I had pieced together, plugged into our living room TV because I couldn't afford a monitor. And that is how I taught myself how to do 360 video. The first project we did, the founder of Capital Factory, his name's Josh Baer, kind of gave me the approval to do their first like virtual tour of the Capital Factory. And at the time, it was their first 360 video production. And that at the time was their most viewed piece of video content ever.
Whoa.
That's right. So that was the first thing we ever did, was this piece of 360 content. And this ties, hopefully, or this may tie into some more of our conversation. But I think the reason that did so well is that as I mentioned earlier, is I've always been a storyteller, right? I've always been interested in that aspect of filmmaking. And what I think made our first VR tour different than what a lot of the other people were doing, or a lot of what the other content was about, is a lot of people would just take a VR camera and stick it in the sand, right? Plug it on the stage and be like, okay, you're here. Just be here. And I thought there was more to it. I took that Felix and Paul approach, where we had professional actors, we had a script, we played the entire film as if that camera was the character, right? So we had a cameo appearance where Josh, the founder, comes and sits down at a table with you, and he tells you why you want to be a part of the community. Our main lead actor, Desmond, he talks to you the whole time, the audience. He shows you around, right? We're telling a story and making you feel like you're part of that moment, not just like, hey, come stand here and see it. And so I think by taking that storytelling approach to our VR production, which we still do today, we tell people we're a storytelling agency, and VR is just the tool we use to paint our pictures. I think that's what set us apart at the beginning. And I think that's also what made that first piece of content we created so incredibly valuable for the Capital Factory.
Yeah. Wow. That whole story just brought me back to when I first got into 360 videos with my Rico Theta. And then when I was creating content at the YouTube YouTube Space LA, they had this whole initiative with Google. I forgot what it was called, where they stitch it together, the GoPro Odyssey. And it was such a huge initiative at YouTube, and they were sponsoring channels, and they were actually giving money to a lot of channels to create these 360 videos. And I probably think one of my friends, the creator up, Hugh Ho, and my friend Russell Vargo.
Oh, you know Russell? I didn't know that. Russell's a great guy.
It's so funny because once you say 360, it's a small community, and so when you're saying these stories, it reminds me of just the Instapro 360, and then the Z Cam, and then everything that was going on with the GoPro Fusion, and how people were playing around with different camera angles with the 360 camera. Like it didn't have to be a VR experience. You can actually use it as a way to capture a moment in 360, and then you can use editing to zoom in different parts around you in that moment of time. And it's just a great story because it reminds me of how a lot of technology that comes out, there's sometimes the early adopter period, right, where people it's a lot of the tech heads who believe in it, but the mainstream doesn't believe it in yet, like the pragmatists or the people who the consumers don't believe in it yet. And I remember that's what happened in the beginning, was that there was this huge push with the Ricoh Theta and the GoPro Fusion and the Instapro, and I was so deep into it, and I fell off because I think I couldn't find a way to get people interested. But you did it in a way by storytelling, and it's from your filmmaking background. And I think it always comes back to storytelling. And so I love that story, and I love the way that you put it all together, because when you think about 360 and how it's just a tool, and it's a tool that gives you access to a brand new way of looking at life through technology, but also it goes back down to storytelling. It's the same thing with marketing, same thing with advertising. People gravitate towards that. So let me ask you, when you started pitching this to brands and trying to get them interested in this technology, in this form of storytelling, what were the first things that you would hear as a objection, and how were you able to overcome that objection and work with companies and get them to trust you?
Oh, great. Okay. I'm actually glad you brought this up, because I think I made the same mistake early on that a lot of people do with early technology. And it's about what you said, is the people that engage with these innovative new systems, right? We're techie, we're nerds, right? We like to get into the weeds on this stuff, right? There's a reason that we stay up late building our own camera systems and linking all this stuff together and testing, is because we like that aspect of it. That's why we're early adopters, right? That's why we're into technology. The problem is people don't care. Yeah. Most people don't care, right? And so the problem is, the thing that I learned is that nobody, and you can bleep this out, but nobody gives a shit about the technology, right? Nobody, and you can look at Apple as an example of this. Apple's brilliant. Apple doesn't sell technology. They do, but they don't. What Apple sells is they sell you music, right? They sell you music in your pocket. They didn't sell you an MP3 player, right? That's why no one else's MP3 players caught on, because everyone's like, what the hell is an MP3, right? It's the same idea. So I made the same mistake with 360 video. And I was running around trying to sell to agency partners, to brands, to all these different, organizations. I was trying to sell them 360 video, and they would look at it and go, well, this is cool, but I don't know what the hell to do with it. Right. This is a piece of technology. I'm not a technology person. What? And so that was the mistake that I made very early on. And it's just right. And you learn. And so what I've realized, is that it's nobody buys technology, people buy solutions, right? Or they pay for something that either makes their problems go away, it makes their job easier, it makes them look better, right? Whatever the case might be. And that you could look at that through any branding, any advertising, any product that we buy as consumers. It always goes to the same idea. And so we have taken a different approach more recently, and it takes more time. It's easy to run into an office and say, I sell VR, and people go, cool. And now your pitch is done. You got in, you got out, the nervousness is over, and you're on to the next one. But there's very few people that are going to buy quote unquote VR. If you come in and you sell a modern training solution that will revolutionize the way your employees learn, and you can prove that it does it 3 times faster at half the cost, now you have their attention. Now that executive is going to listen, right? You're selling a solution to a problem. You're selling a better type of mousetrap. You're not selling a technology. So that is what I personally have shifted and learned in the way that we approach it. And so I know before this call, we were chit-chatting about, how long it can take to write creative proposals. And so that's one of the challenges, right? With the businesses that we're in is it takes more time to create an honest solution for somebody. It takes more thought. It takes more patience. It takes more conversation, but it allows you to create a more valuable product. And that, at the end of the day, doesn't matter what you're selling. That's what people want is that. And so that's kind of a long answer to your question, but that's probably what I would say to that.
No, thank you for that. Basically, we're establishing and developing creative solutions to someone's problem. And sometimes these companies, they don't understand the amount of time that goes into creation and to coming up with an idea that's customized toward your problem in order for you to feel listened to and thought after and appreciated. And it takes so much time to come up with a storyboard. It comes up with so much time to actually write up a proposal that it's almost like you want to be able to include that, of course, in the budget, but also you should sometimes just delegate that. There's times where I think to myself, should I just, of course, delegate the storyboards and the proposal or whatnot, and can I focus on either just running the business or being creative? And it's the paradox of expanding as an entrepreneur. Like, you're getting bigger because you want success and you love it, but also it's going to take up more of your time because you have a bigger the business, the more work you got to do.
That's right, and you have to be willing to let some stuff go.
Yeah,
it's hard to do.
It's hard to do because an entrepreneur, you're trying to solve problems. You're trying to be sometimes a one-man band, and you can't be that all the time. And you brought up a really important point about the idea of how much time it takes to come up with creative proposals and creativity in general, and valuing creativity and having to get companies and people to value creativity, because I'm going through it right now. I mean, I'll put some companies on blast where they want the full creative package plus the production package, and usually creative is different. Coming up with an idea it takes time. And so when you have to come up with an idea, especially when it comes to a 3D, a 360 video, an AR, video, like, how long does it take, and how do you get into that creative mode to think in 360? Because it's no longer just linear. Right, you're dealing with a whole world and environment. You're dealing with spatial audio. You're dealing with somebody who has the choice to choose their path in a video. So, how do you come up with that? How do you go through that creative process?
Wow. Well, that's a very good question. And if I could answer it simply, I would. We don't. One of the things that I believe in it's like one of the ethos of our company is that communication is key, right? And so, each client, each project, each piece of technology, because, backing up a little, I started the company, I told you earlier, we were shooting 360 video. That was it. Now we're a full immersive agency. We have a development team, creative director, designer. And so we've done everything from, VR headset-based interactive games for brands to augmented reality mobile apps to bring education components to walking trails. So we've done a lot of it. And the reason we do that is because at the end of the day, the tools we're using, right? Thinking to your point about thinking in spatial areas versus a 2D, right, screen. Now we're thinking spatially, we're thinking in 3 dimensions. And so that idea of thinking applies to all of the content we create. 360 video, VR, AR, doesn't matter. We're thinking spatially. So that's just a change of thought. And that goes back to my point about communication. So communicating that to our clients and showing them examples, letting them play with technology, if they haven't already, getting them in a headset. So that's the first. Communicate like, hey, look, we're not talking about a video anymore. We're talking about a spatialized 3D spatial experience. And so we communicate that. We start, right? Because our clients know their problem the best.
Mm-hmm.
So getting them on board to help us, if they can come up to speed and understand a little bit more about what we're talking about, then, because we still get clients all the time that are like, they say they want a VR AR thing. And I'm like, well, those are very different experiences. And so we, very, very smart, intelligent, successful business folks and folks from agencies and brands that actually don't even know the difference between a VR experience and an AR experience, which is not to talk down to anybody, right? Mm-hmm. But it's just the idea that this, it reminds me, it humbles me every day just to remember, like, that's right, this is still very cutting edge stuff. So to answer your question, we start with always trying to bring our clients up to speed. Mm-hmm. If you say you want an AR experience, let's have you play with some AR. Let's just watch some videos on YouTube about what AR can do. And then for us, we normally will get that information from them. And then we immediately jump to, what are the objectives of this, right? What is the problem you're trying to solve? Mm-hmm. And then we normally make the connection. That's where our creative expertise comes in. Mm-hmm. They say, we want to do an AR experience because we need people to engage with our trade show booth, but because of COVID, nobody can touch anything. And we are trying to sell, electric locomotive train, engine. And it's like, how? And so they're like, help. I know, right? There's a picture of a train on my wall, and I'm thinking, and so I'm just like, oh, there's a train, right? So like that is in that specific example, right? It's like, okay, well, what's your problem? And they go, well, the problem is we can't put a locomotive inside of a trade show, and nobody, or whatever the case might be, right? As that example.
Where they are.
So, yeah, it's like, oh, but we can, okay, that problem we can help you solve. And we can let your client take that experience home with them. How does that sound? And they go, oh, yes. And then from there, it's like you said, it's about creating storyboards, or it's creating 3D mock-ups. Our designer loves Adobe XD. That's a great software we use to do mock-ups, right? And again, it's a balance of, bringing them up to speed, making sure everybody's on the same page with terminology and technology. What are the problems you're trying to solve? In what scenario? Who's your target customer? Collecting all of that information. And then we go to town. We just brainstorm, we kick stuff around, we whiteboard, we go out and, grab a happy hour, we go on walks, whatever we have to do until we feel like we've got a good solution that's going to solve that problem. That's also something that falls within their budget and aligns with their target audience.
Wow. And that's, now you got me thinking about, what are the advantages and disadvantages of VR and AR as opposed to regular 2D video when it comes to storytelling and solving a problem?
The biggest challenge with VR is obviously the scalability, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
There's like 3 billion cell phones in the world that we know of. I don't know how many VR headsets there are, but there's not even a hundredth of that, right? And so there's just the volume of VR. Like, if you want to push a piece of content out to the general populace, VR is not the right solution. But it's incredibly powerful when people are in it. So if you have a highly controlled audience, whether it's at a trade show, or we just did like a huge project for a mental hospital where we were helping train their new employees on empathy for mental illness. That is a great use case for VR, because every single one of those employees has to show up at the hospital for 2 weeks of training before they can have a job. And so you've got your audience in a very confined environment, and you can sanitize headsets, put people in them, and they can get this amazingly powerful experience. And so that's like a good use case of VR, a good side and a downside of VR, right? Incredibly powerful, hard to distribute, or challenging to distribute. Augmented reality, on the other hand, is widely distributable, right? Back to the 3 billion cell phone number, I think something along the thought, like, if you bought a new phone in the last 2.5 to 3 years, there's a very, very good chance it is AR capable and it's in your pocket, right? So you can now access billions of people with an augmented reality experience. The other challenge with AR is that's the good side. The challenge with it is it's still fairly limited, right? You still can only do so much with it. And and this is with all interactive content, right? Face filters, whatever the case is, and this is the difference between video. right? The video, we always joke in the video industry, is cut to the close-up, right? You control the narrative, right? Unless somebody edits your footage without your permission, which is illegal technically, right? Is you control the narrative, right? But with AR, you now create a new reality that the user now controls, your audience controls. So if you build an AR filter that somebody turns into a white supremacist meme, like there's nothing you can do about that, right? Because not that I've ever seen that happen, but just to make an extreme case, you are now giving people an interactive experience that they control. And that means that you are giving up control. That's not, again, extreme example, but that's an inherent risk with augmented reality, is that you as the brand are no longer in control of the story, or necessarily in control of the story or the reality that your audience is experiencing. Now, to back that up, and this is my last point on your question, is that but the other thing about both VR and AR and 360 video that makes them incredibly powerful compared to traditional media, all other things aside, is that you create every single user has an individualized experience. And that is not necessarily the same with traditional content. You and I could watch the exact same 360 video in the exact same VR headset at the exact same time in the exact same setting, and we could pop those VR headsets off and have had completely different experiences inside of that. And so that's the real power of it. And that's why I think it's such a great tool, is you give up some of that freedom, but you're giving it to your audience. And that is something that they remember. That is something that sticks with them. Like I said, I watched that Cirque du Soleil thing almost 5 years ago. Yeah. And I still remember it vividly. I still remember the look on the guy's face when he popped his head up out of the orchestral pit and looked at me.
Wow. Just thinking about VR and AR and 360 video, and then going back to your story of how you got into film and movies because you're a puppy, and then your parents giving you this the access to VHS tapes and movies if you were a good kid. My question is how do you feel as someone who grew up with movies and seeing this new way of telling storytelling? Do you feel that the traditional way of cinema is going to fade away and a new type of storytelling is going to take over? Or do you want to hold on to the traditional cinema, yet use VR and AR and 360 as just another form of storytelling?
I think the way that we tell stories as humans has never changed, right? The way that we still tell a story, if you go back and look at like cave paintings, right? Or read a book that's 1,000 years old or whatever the case might be, the story, that stays the same. We're still a film, an AR experience, a cave painting, an Instagram post, whatever it is, it's telling some story, because as humans, that's how we engage with things. That's how we remember things, right? And so that, I don't think a good story is ever going to change. And you know, that's part of it. And so our creative director at CM&B is a filmmaker. He's a brilliant storyteller, and we use that in everything we do, right? We're always asking him, his name's Wes. We always ask Wes, like, you know, what's the story here? How do we, you know, because you still have to tell a story and engage with people on an emotional level. And that's never going to change, right? Emotional engagement leads to a user reaction or action. And that doesn't matter what format or medium you're telling your story, you still have to make that emotional engagement, attachment with your audience. So that'll never change. And, you know, to your question about tools, that is something that I was going to bring up earlier when you asked about, you know, presenting to clients and whatnot, was that VR and AR, one of the other mistakes that I think the industry made as a whole 5 years ago was like, and this happens all the time, so I'm not just picking on the VR industry or AR industry, but it's like, this is it, right? This is going to change the paradigm. Everything is going to be VR now. And it's like, well, they said the same thing about mobile phones. We also, I mean, yes, you watch Netflix on your phone sometimes, but if you have a 50-inch TV on your wall and a couch, there's a good chance you're not going to watch Netflix on your phone. You're going to watch it on that TV.
That's right.
And so I think that VR and AR is just another tool in our toolbox as creators. And I don't think we're ever going to replace the true, you know, cinema experience, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
which I saw today that Alamo Drafthouse filed bankruptcy, which, oh my God,
No.
I know. It's so like,
Oh, it breaks my heart.
right? Chapter 11. So they're going to restructure, and they're not going away, but the one downtown is done. Anyways, we could go probably chat about that and
Oh, we
cry a
will.
little
No,
bit.
we'll meet up. We'll have an
Yeah.
Austin meetup.
But that's right. So like that, like, so the business of cinema is suffering. Obviously that's pandemic driven, right? So there's a shift happening there in terms of, those businesses have to create income in order to stay alive. And we're seeing all of them get hammered hard.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but that experience, like going to the movies with your friends, like in Austin, every time a new Star Wars goes out, there's a group of like 6 or 8 of us. We always go out, we get dinner, we have a couple of beers, and we go watch the new Star Wars, and we do it religiously, and we do it on opening night. And like that experience is unreplaceable in VR. Now I might go and play those friends in VR a game of paintball and enjoy that just as much, but it's a different experience, right? It's a different way to enjoy a piece of content. We're not going to sit in our VR headsets and watch a Star Wars movie together, because there's difference about sitting in the theater, throwing popcorn at your buddy during a scene or whatever the case is. And so I don't think it's going to erase that. It might augment it, but I don't think it's going to go away.
Yeah, I think about it a lot because of what happened in COVID, the amount of theaters that closed down, and also just the anticipation for summer movies that you usually get around April was totally buzzkilled. And you wonder how the industry would ever rebound on summer blockbuster movies in the theater. And of course, it'll, like you said, the traditional cinema experience is such a timeless human experience of being in a group setting with your tribe and enjoying entertainment together, to laugh and cry and to smile and enjoy community while watching either a screen or hearing a musician or seeing a dancer. Whatever it is, that community experience, that tribe experience is always going to be wanted and needed. And that actually brings it back to VR, right? Because VR is so personal in a way, because it's you in the headset, and it's hard to interact with a person not right next to you. And that's why I feel with AR, it's a little bit more interactive. What do you feel would be the next step for something like VR? Because I know that they're using VR for these live sports experiences, right? They're trying to create these experiences at the NBA where you see yourself in the stands, but you're going to be buying tickets in a seat so that you can watch the game in either your headset or through your phone, or maybe even on your TV. But how do you found, with a headset on your head to make VR a community experience? What is the challenge there, and how do you overcome that?
Well, I think, I'll challenge you on that actually a little bit, because, what's interesting is my biggest escape during the initial lockdown, right? When everybody was like, we didn't know what happened with COVID or what was going on, and everyone was like literally locking themselves indoors, right? You couldn't even go outside. It was like against the law. The way that I got my social interaction was in VR, because
that's cool.
As an example, there's a game, or it's free app called Rec Room, and you can go in, you create your own avatar. And as an example, I would go play paintball, and I would get my ass kicked by all these little 10-year-old kids who were talking smack the whole time. But it was interesting, because these little low poly avatars with it's a real voice, right? So you have real time voice communication. I can see people's hands move. I can see their head move. It was enough to help reduce. I'm a huge extrovert, and so it was enough for me. It actually helped me deal with like the trapped in feeling of the pandemic. When I was feeling trapped, and I was like, I need people, I need social interaction. That interactive, and you go look at a screenshot or just Google Rec Room, and you will see like the graphics are really low poly, like Simpsons characters. And it doesn't matter. That was enough. It triggered in my reptilian brain. It satisfied my need of being near other humans. And that I did not expect that to happen. I had never expected that type of like deep mental satisfaction of being inside of a VR experience. So when someone says that VR is a social experience or an individualized experience, I will challenge that tooth and nail.
Mm-hmm.
Now, with that said, I'll make another example of this, which is like not the so it must have been, oh God, it must have been 4. It was early VR days, but it was like 4 years ago. It was was it the last World Cup or the previous World Cup? It must have been the last World Cup. But either way, Fox Sports put out a fantastic app for the World Cup, and you got to sit in a VR headset with your friends, and you got to watch the World Cup. And it wasn't as good as wasn't. I'm a big soccer fan. It's not as good as being in the stadium, right? It'll never replace 80,000 people screaming and shaking the world, and like that'll never be replaced. But it was a way more intimate, interesting experience to sit in this VR moment, this VR place, and watch this game with while I was able to talk to my best friend who was in Atlanta and I was in Austin, and we watched the World Cup together, and it felt like we were in this booth at the same time. Again, never going to replace the live experience, but it was a hell of a lot more intimate and engaging as a social experience versus sitting on my ass on my couch watching it alone
TV.
On yeah, correct.
Wow, Ricky, I am so glad that we got on this podcast, and to tell you the truth, we can go on for a couple hours. So I would like to challenge you to a glass of beer at the Alamo Draft House before it closes. Before we go, I'd like to ask you, what is your advice or your thoughts and message to brands or companies out there who want to jump into the world of AR and VR and 360 video and are skeptical of whether or not it's going to help them? Like, what would you say to them? Why it's important, but also, why it would be great for their brand to experience what you give them through AR, VR, and 360.
Part of what I would probably say to that is similar to what we talked about before, which this technology is you're giving it's the only way to give on a grand scale, it can be one of the only ways to give your users a unique experience like this. Like there is that component to it. When it comes to, we get a lot of pushback, or a lot of folks that still maybe either don't understand it or don't think it can be a good solution for them. And so they avoid it. And so what I would say is I always tell people is reach out. There's a huge, especially in Austin, there's a bunch of really fantastic VR and AR agencies. Chocolate Milk Donuts is one of them. And, these are people that work in they work in your neighborhood. They live, they live in the same town, and we're here to help. And so, we always encourage our customers, reach out. It's free, right? We don't, obviously it's, conversations are always free. And so just, reach out and chat, learn, right? We're in this business because we're excited about its potential, and we want to help people solve those problems, engage with customers, sell more widgets, whatever the case might be. And you can look at the science. The tools that we have access to are new, and they're still being fleshed out in full, in full force, but they have proven to be more powerful than other forms of media when used correctly and in the right setting. And so, at Chocolate Milk Donuts, we're happy to tell you when we don't think VR and AR is right, and we'll recommend a great video agency or photo company if that's what we think you need. But yeah, that's what I would say, right? It's a new technology. There's lots to learn, and there's lots of people that are out there willing to help. So don't be hesitant to reach out and just have the conversation. Because worst case scenario, you'll learn a little something, and you'll have a partner moving forward.
Agreed. I will actually take you up on that and go to your office here in Austin and play around with all your headsets.
That sounds great.
Before we go, actually, I would love for you to tell people where to find Chocolate Milk and Donuts and how can we support you?
Well, the easiest thing is, chocolatesanddonuts.com. Donuts spelled the easy way, DONUTS. And if you're interested, we have our own video series called The Donut Shop, where we cover topics about all different things VR and AR. So we, do that just to keep our community up to speed on what's going on. So if you go to our website, chocolatesanddonuts.com, you can sign up for The Donut Shop. We'll never spam you, I promise. We send out an email every 2 weeks, roughly, and that's just information to, keep our community up to speed on what's happening, what's coming, and how they can take advantage of this amazing new technology.
Amazing. All right. Well, Ricky, thank you so much for spending time with me and nerding out on 360 AR and VR.
My pleasure.
And it was really great to talk with you. And so have a great night, and I look forward to meeting you in person.
Absolutely, sir. Stay safe out there, and we'll see you soon. I appreciate it. Thank you.
For sure. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Creative Haven podcast. And if you dig it and like what you heard today, please give us a nice review and rating and share it with one of your friends that you think needs some creative inspiration. You can always find more content and resources at thecreativehaven.com and hit me up on Instagram at Mitchel Dumlao. And if you want to reach out, collab, or ask any questions, you have my permission to slide into my DMs. So keep positive, continue to learn and hone your craft, and create all day. Salamat.